Hey, it's been a while, but I'm back after, what was originally I was going to do this in March, but I couldn't. Couldn't because of my tournament. We got one person. Welcome. But yes, it has been a while, and it's about dang time that finally the first deep dive of this year. Originally, obviously, it was supposed to be I believe it was going to be Vulcan. Then I had to cancel that. That'll still happen at some point. And then this was going to be in March, but I delayed it to right now, April. But yes, this specific deep dive I'm going to be talking about is Coheed and Cambria. Now, originally, I was going to originally have Jake from the Upside Down Church, but unfortunately, both times when I rescheduled, originally it was scheduled in March. He wasn't able to, and then I rescheduled it for April because of my tournament on Instagram, which y'all can go and follow over there. Link in the description for that. And then I told him the new date in April, today, and he still said no. So unfortunately, I'm gonna be doing this solo. Unfortunately, as it is, as I gotta grab all of these. Gotta grab the albums because I got all of their albums pretty much. So, yes, gonna be talking about Coheed and Cambria today. All 11 studio albums, and I'm like, why is this even here? But regardless, um, yeah, obviously, I'm gonna get started here for this. I guess obviously started with how I got into these guys. I believe this was about 15, 16 years ago. I remember getting, I think, a magazine, guitar magazine or something like that. I remember it had something to do with guitars and I guess kind of nerd or something like that. Kind of like nerd, smart people and stuff like that. And the frontman of this band, Claudio Sanchez, was was in this. I think I couldn't remember what guitar he was. It might have been the double neck, or maybe it was. I don't know, but that was when I originally discovered them, and I think at the time this album had just come out, Year of the Black Rainbow. And it's, ever since then, I've been a fan of them, huge fan of them ever since then. Ever since then. So that's kind of the history, and I've been a fan of them ever since. Big fan of them outside of one album. We'll get to talk about that. But been a huge fan of them ever since then. So, without further ado, get to talk about this band, the history, I guess you could say. Um, Basically the beginnings. In March 1995, after the split of the aforementioned frontman Claudio Sanchez and Travis Stever's band called Toxic Parents, they formed a band with Nate Kelly called Beautiful Loser. The band featured Stever on vocals and guitar, Sanchez on guitar, Kelly on the drums, and John Carleo on bass. The group was short-lived, breaking up by June 1995 after an argument over gas money. Stever left the band, and the resulting trio was named Shabudi, a word taken from African tribe chants that means naked prey in the film The Naked Prey. The band spent nearly a year experimenting with a multitude of different musical styles, including punk rock, indie rock, acoustic rock, funk, and heavy metal. Then Carleo left the band in August 1996. Kelly recruited Michael Todd, who was kind of a big deal in some of these early albums up until, I guess, the Aftermath albums. We'll talk about that, to take his place. Todd, who was primarily a guitarist, picked up the bass specifically for Shabudi. As Shabudi, the band wrote dozens of songs and released their first studio demo, planned to take over the world in 1999. The band also released the Penelope EP in 1999, shortly after which Steve rejoined the band. Kelly left the band during a performance in late 1999. Josh Eppert, then the drummer of his brother Joey Eppert's band, 3, replaced him. The band went on to release Delirium Trigger, which is a song we'll be talking about here shortly, in 2000, still featuring Kelly on the drums but listing Eppert in the liner notes. Now, here's the thing, the kicker with this. I decided to separate this because, separated this. Basically all of these. Several songs that appeared on Delirium Trigger were adapted into a series of science fiction comics written by Claudio Sanchez called the Bag Dot On Dot Line Adventures, which was later renamed the Amory Wars. And get through that mention it. Sanchez's side project originally developed during a 1998 trip to Paris, where the band members decided to rename themselves off of two characters in this Coheed and Cambria, named after two of the story's protagonists, and adopted the concept story as a theme that would unify their future albums, with the exception of one. And this side branch also created Coheed's official logo, the keyword, a symbol for the planetary alignment of the Amory Wars universe. Now, I wanted to quickly mention this real quick. I'm not gonna go full in depth on most of the concepts and the stories of these albums. Um, Basically, it's kind of it's kind of big and stuff like that. If you want a more, I have a link. If you want a more in-depth description of this whole Amory Wars I have a link in the description to go and check out. Maybe after you watch this, um, from one JJ Metalhead. She went into full detail on the story. I'm only going to summarize the stories behind these albums, pretty much. Um, with the exception of one. Obviously, one isn't a concept album, but pretty much, I believe 10 of the 11 albums of theirs are concept albums, with the exception of one. So I'm just gonna go into summary. I'm gonna talk more about the music in here. That's what I want to focus more on, is the music, not so much the concept. Like I said, you want to go and hear about the stories about each of these albums that are connected to this Amory Wars universe. Link in the description for the playlist that JJ Metalhead did for those albums. Shout out to JJ Metalhead, by the way. So yes, they also eventually sign with a label for all of this, as I am obviously, as you know, I'm on my laptop, so I have to lift every so often to keep it cool and stuff. They eventually signed with Equal Vision, and in 2002 we get the first one in the story, but technically number 2 or 3 in the lineup when it comes to this. The second stage, Turbine Blade, which, like I said, I'm going over these summary wise. It follows the namesake of the band, Coheed and Cambria Kilgannon, who are manipulated by villain Wilhelm Ryan into believing their children carry a virus, forcing a tragic high-stakes moral dilemma to save the universe. That's basically what the story entails of this album. So we got two people. Welcome in here. Music, it's pretty much kind of that pop. Early on, they were trying to figure out their sound. Obviously, that's what you think of doing when you're doing a debut. It's basically trying to go over their sound, figure out their sound. They would an album later, but really this is kind of pop punk emo, kind of the time with some of those bands, especially when you think of Equal Vision, you're thinking most of those bands of like all those kind of metal emo pop punk kind of stuff. Even I think some core is thrown in here. One of my favorites is Time Consumer. I absolutely love that. I have to look through all the notes and all the lyrics for some of them. Everything Evil as well. So yeah, it's definitely got some bangers on this album, for the most part. But yeah, it's kind of just figuring out their sound. Not really something that, I definitely kind of have some enjoyment over it. It's definitely good music. Like I said, Time Consumer, I love. Apparently, this is the only one that has a guest on here. I believe it's Dr. No played guitar on Time Consumer. He does the guitar solos and stuff like that. The only time in a Coheed album that has guests on here. You don't expect that. Expect that. Like somebody that's outside of the band or something like that does a guest role. But yeah. Yeah, he is on here. Like I said, music wise, it's definitely of that core pop punk emo. Really great album. I'd give it a 9.5 out of 10. Absolutely love it, music wise. But yeah, that's the first one. All right, after that, not much change. Same lineup. We get to, I kind of would say the probably the one of the weakest when it comes to the concept of in the story, and that is in keeping secrets of Silent on Earth 3. They did also apparently on here they signed with Columbia, a major album that, believe it or not, these next two albums kind of are released via Equal Vision and Columbia. Obviously keeping with kind of the summary of this, the story. It follows Claudio, one of the children of Coheed and Cambria. Um, this is 10 years after Second Stage Turbine Blade. After discovering his family's murder, Claudio seeks vengeance against Supreme Tri-Mage Willem Ryan, teaming up with Ambelina and the Aerobot Sizer on here. I know about certain songs on here. Here, you got a favorite House of Lennox, one of those, Blood Red Summer. I didn't really hear much on this because I was like, I've heard enough to know. Yeah, this is the album I mentioned. This is the album where it's like, it sounds like what Coheed and Cambria are now going forward, pretty much. I would say, yeah, the sound is pretty much there. There's definitely a prog element a little bit there. Not so much maybe on later albums, but yeah, it's not really one that I would ever go back to that often. Um, too often. You know, there might be some songs I might like on here. Here, but yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a downgrade. Despite it is kind of the start of their modern sound, pretty much. But I'm not really that big on this album that much. Musically, it's it's of their style. It's what they are nowadays. But like I said, it's not one that I would go and re-listen to again or just enjoyment. It's I wouldn't go and listen to this as opposed to albums after this or even this album as well. Well, but yeah, I think to me when it comes in the concept, this is the weakest album of theirs. But it's not that. It's not a bad album. It's not a bad album, but an album has got to be at the bottom. And this unfortunately is 9.25 out of 10. Enjoy it. It's great music, but just like not really much memorable on this. As opposed to this next one. I think this is the one that everybody knows when you think of Coheed and Cambria. You instantly think of this one. Good Apollo on Birdie Star 4, Part 1. From Fear Through the Eyes of Madness because of one freaking song on here, Welcome Home. Which every time they play live, the double neck comes out. Basically the story it follows the protagonist Claudio again as he navigates the cosmic war-torn Amory Wars, while simultaneously the writer struggles with his own madness. With his own madness. With his own madness on here. But yeah, everybody, when you think of this, you instantly think of, yeah, like I said, Welcome Home. Freaking fantastic song. But every other song on here, I absolutely enjoy it. 10 Speed of God's Blood and Burial. Really love it. The writer. Wake Up's really good. The Suffering I really love on here. Here, they're all really fantastic. This is definitely a step in the right direction. I always kind of also like Keeping the Blade. It's kind of going back to the opener of this. It really is like Keeping the Blade is really freaking cool that they went back to that a little bit on that because apparently this is the ending pretty much. Well, start of the ending, as I said. It's part one. Yeah, there is a part two, but really love really making fantastic albums after this. It's nothing but banger after banger. Like I said, Welcome Home's great. The solos back and forth. Travis does some solo work on some solos, especially on Welcome Home. Him and Claudio go back and forth and stuff like that. That in terms of solos, I think that's the only one that I think Travis ever does guitar work. This unfortunately also happens to be until we get to the Afterman albums to feature Josh Shepard. He leaves, but like I said, he'll come back. We'll get to that. Um, but yeah, the last one he does, and man, for a while, what a banger he went out with on this album, man. It's fantastic album. Love it. 9.75. Easily one of the best. But it's not the best because I instantly think this one is easily the best one. Obviously, in the beginning one, the Amory Wars saga of albums, this one technically ends it. Good Apollo on Burning Star 4 Part 2. No World for Tomorrow. This is the first one where it's solely um, Columbia. It's only one of two albums that are solely Columbia with them. And this right here is the best one in my opinion. Love it to death. Goes for the title track. Yes, obviously. This concludes the original Amory War saga, focusing on Claudio Kilgannon embracing his destiny to defeat Wilhelm Ryan. This basically ends the whole thing. But songs on here, freaking love No World for Tomorrow, The Hound, I love The Running Free, and easily probably the best ballad that they have ever done in any Coheed album. And I easily think of one of three. There's definitely going to be some others I'll mention. Mother Superior. I freaking love Mother Superior. It's probably one of easily the best ballad that Coheed ever done. I would say maybe number two. It's easily in the top three for me, and love it. Gravemakers and Gunslingers, Justice and Murder, and then you have the Incomplete, basically closing it out. At least right now, when it comes to this, as you can see, you got all that, the CD and stuff. Then you got the 5-part suite for the Incomplete. Freaking fantastic. This is easily the best one. Yes, also, here's something. Chris Penny had joined, but he wasn't able to record on this, so they got a session guy. And man, what a session guy they got. They got the late, great Taylor Hawkins from Foo Fighters on this album, and man, he does a fantastic job on this album. And yeah, easily, it's also, I would say, the heaviest album they've ever done. I mean, yeah, there's some songs later on that they do get a little bit heavy, Um, but man, this all the way through heavy. Yeah, there's some ballady stuff, but this is probably the heaviest one. Well, actually, I'd say that's kind of a lie because we're about to get to the one that I think is also kind of the heaviest. We'll get to that. But man, freaking love this album. It's easily my favorite from them. Freaking love it. 9.75. Easily the best one of theirs. And then after that, apparently we go back. Because apparently this is before those albums. Technically one, maybe two, but it is Year of the Black Rainbow. It focuses on Dr. Leonard Honenberger, the story, obviously, who creates the Aerobots to fight the villainous Wilhelm Ryan after his son is killed and his wife Pearl is kidnapped. Mention the Aerobots on Silent Earth to help Claudio. But then this one is easily the most experimental of theirs. And probably the heaviest as well. You get to one and you get through the broken. Man, the first half I probably will say is probably the strongest when it comes to it. The most experimental and probably the most heaviest. It also probably is because they got a certain somebody to produce this. One Joe Barresi, yeah, from Tool of all people. He's worked with Tool, and I'm like, oh, and Atticus Ross is on here, so that kind of explains why this is the most experimental of all their stuff. stuff. You got guys who are known in kind of the experimentation and work with people who do the experimentations, like Evil Joe working with Tool and stuff like that. Atticus Ross, he's done the Nine Inch Nails stuff, but man, the most experimental, especially on like some of the like Guns of Summer with the all the weird stuff that's going on in there and all the heaviness. It's just like pumped up to 10. 10. Freaking love it. The first six, five songs, not counting the intro one. Freaking Far, another great kind of a ballad, but not really, really. This Shattered Symphony, Here We Are Juggernauts. Unfortunately, this one kind of was skipping a little bit, but still a great. I still love Here We Are Juggernauts, the broken freaking banger to open it up, and yeah, it's banger of an album. Love it, love it. I give this a 9.75 as well. Well, just expect that some of these albums are all going to be 9.75. So yeah, freaking Year of the Black Rainbow. And I figured I wanted these next ones kind of are in some ways similar. The song structures are pretty similar with these because they are pretty similar. The Afterman albums, we got Ascension here and Descension. They're focused on Cyrus Amory as he discovers that the entity source that's binding his universe together call it's actually a realm of the dead and stuff like that. The key works and stuff like that. It's a land of the dead and all that stuff. And then you got his wife, all that stuff, and then eventually led to him, you know, eventually, caused an accident that unfortunately took her life. And he goes and tries to find her and stuff like that. Spoilers for later ahead. This ain't the last time we'll talk. Spoilers for another album ahead. This ain't the last time we'll hear about him, but I'll mention when we get to that. But yes, this one feels a little bit much more heavier as opposed to this one. This one kind of feels more on a lighter side, but they're both the same sound, pretty much. I kind of like this one a little bit more because it has one of the best, another one of the best ballads of theirs. Dark Side of Me, freaking love it. Yeah, I just absolutely love it. It's a great ballad, love it. Um, freaking what else can I say? And then you got the four of the five key entities, and you start off with Century on here, but it has Domino is a heavy song. Well, Hollywood the Cracked, and then Vic the Butcher kind of go in, kind of go hand in hand, really heavy, and then you got Evagria and Subtraction that ends it. You get the Pretellethal, however you pronounce it. I'm probably butchering it. Um, but man, hell of albums. Both I give them 9.75s easily. Maybe some of them they're leaning on 10. They're definitely leaning on 10. I definitely would also say the Good Apollo albums are definitely leaning on 10 for me as well. But yeah, the Afterman albums, freaking fantastic. And then we get to going into the one non-concept album. Concept album, The Color Before the Sun. Their one their one non-concept album. I was surprised to find out I actually do enjoy this one a lot, but it's one that I'm like not really gonna go about talking about it that much. It's great. It's basically kind of continuation of what they've been doing, pretty much. Um, a lot of heavy stuff, a lot of the more melody and ballady, melodic, all that stuff. But yeah, I freaking love it. 9.75 out of 10. I'm surprised at how much I actually enjoyed this album. But yeah, not gonna. Oh, you gotta be kidding me.
All right, sorry about that, everybody. But yeah, my laptop just freaking shuts off because of the freaking overheating and stuff. Like, apologies for that. But now I'm having to get through this with my freaking phone while I'm to go back and forth here. So apologies for that. My laptop just decides to be like, yeah, f you, freaking yeah, freaking. So apologies for that. So apologies as I get things situated here. Okay. Yeah, apologies for all of that, everybody. But as I get things situated here, um, uh, okay, I need to see if it still works. All right, good. We are still good. All righty. So I only got about 3 more albums left. Back to the concept work. We got Vaxis Act 1. Act 1. There was Roadrunner on this one. The story behind this one is um, follows criminals Nostrand and his girlfriend Nia as they are imprisoned on the planet Dark Sinister following a heist gone wrong. They navigate the brutal prison, reunite, and plot an escape to protect their unborn child, Vaxis, ultimately finding their way out after killing their betrayer, Otto. So yeah, this album right here, back to the concept stuff. I ain't got much to say about this one. Hell, it's heavy album, really heavy, and also, like I said, getting back to the concept stuff for most of the part. I can't remember much because I can't, for some reason, can't find the booklet. Oh, this is what the thing looks like here, here. But man, heavy, really heavy stuff. Um, really love it for the most part. There's some stuff on here that I really love for the most part. But yeah, freaking heavy. 9.75 out of 10. Really, really heavy. I would say maybe a little bit heavier than Year of the Black Rainbow, but freaking love it. Yeah, Vaxis Act 1. Um, Next up, not gonna waste time here. We got about 3 albums to go. Vaxis Act 2. A window into the waking mind. This one follows Nia and Nostrand, who are on the run from their seemingly comatose son, Vaxis, 5 years after Vaxis Act 1. While they seek to wake him, Vaxis is actually highly evolved and experiencing a mental reality beyond their comprehension. Um, yeah, but while it is pretty much a continuation of all that, it's kind of an interesting one because I believe the first 10 songs are not even over 4 minutes in length, and then you get to the longer songs, which I believe track 11 is 6 minutes, track 5 is 8. No, not 8. That track 12 is 5, and then the final track, the title track of this, is the longest singular Coheed song ever, 8 minutes. The title track of this one. Um, Man, that 5 minute one though, whew, love it. Great ballad. Well, it's not really a proper ballad; it's a rocking ballad, but definitely, whew, brings the tears. For me, love it. 9.75 again. I know it's a lot of these albums are 9.75. The only ones we haven't had that are 9.75 are the first two. So yeah, you might get used to seeing that. Well, at least not for long, because we're on to the album in question that I'll finally get to talk about here. Freaking as everybody should be aware, I was originally going to be on Jeff's stream. I was going to show top 10 for me, but I wasn't able to make it, unfortunately. Yeah. So, but he was able to mention my list, and this one was my number one. I finally get to talk about it. Finally, my number one of 2025, Vaxis Act 3, The Father of Make Believe. Leave, man, this album. First off, we go over the story of this. Follows Nia and Austrian's vow to protect their child Vaxis while confronting the villainous five houses of the Star Supremacy. And believe it or not, there's some callbacks, not just musically to a lot of other albums, but more specifically the Afterman albums, because it features somebody that I mentioned I specifically mentioned the Afterman albums that I mentioned as a spoiler. We come to the point of where's the spoiler? Cyrus Amory is alive. What? I was like, wait, what? Cyrus Amory's alive? You gotta be kidding me. I was not expecting to hear that, but yeah, Cyrus Amory is in here. His wife, I believe, is Mary, I believe on here. And yeah, right there. That's Cyrus Amory. Somehow still alive. Yeah, right there in the middle. That's supposed to be Cyrus and then his wife, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. And then you got the lyrics and stuff like that. Some of them are definitely callbacks. Yesterday's Lost has something from a familiar reprising of the Hollow song from, if I can get this back in here. The the Hollow from this album here. There's also stuff from the other one, other callbacks and stuff. But what made me think of why this ended up being number one is the song Corner My Confidence. Now, I mentioned there's three ballads. I mentioned there's Mother Superior, Dark Side of Me is another one, and then Corner My Confidence is easily up there when it comes to some of the ballads. Like I said, this album is full of callbacks from previous albums. A little bit of the first two, definitely some from the Good Apollo and the Afterman albums. But man, that's probably what the callbacks, sounds, and lyrical stuff. Man, I love this album. It's easily up there with these albums, with the Good Apollo and the Afterman albums. And at least right now, easily the best one of the Vaxis albums. Again, 9.75. I would almost give this a 10. You know what? Screw it. 10. I'll be giving it a 10. Love it. Love it. Beating out. Somehow, near the end of the month in December, it beat out Dream Theater. So I definitely think it definitely deserves a 10. 10 for me. But, yeah, that's pretty much. Now we get to, I guess, the rankings pretty much. So number 11 is Silent Innkeeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3. Number 10 for me, The Second Stage Turbine Blade. Number 9 somehow. I thought this was going to be the bottom, but I actually thought they'd done up to it being in the top 10. The Color Before the Sun. Yeah, surprising me. Number 8, Year of the Black Rainbow. Dropped it right there. Right there. There. That's number 7. Vaxis Act 1. Number 6. Vaxis Act 2. Number 5. Vaxis Act 3. I know I just gave it a 10, but there's a reason, obviously, 2 albums are better than 1. So, number 4. Afterman Ascension. Number 3. Afterman Descension. Number 2, Good Apollo, I'm Burning Star 4 Part 1. And then finally, at number 1, Good Apollo, I'm Burning Star 4 Part 2, No World for Tomorrow. So, yep, that's going to do it for me here. Having to start on laptop, I'm probably going to get that, hopefully get that fixed. But coming up on the channel, we got, I figure I'll make the announcement, the next deep dives we're about to do from here on the channel are obviously the Metallica Death month, which is the deep dives of Metallica is going to be first, and then follow that by Megadeth Part 1 on the May 15th is Metallica. May 16th is Megadeth Part 2. Mean Metal Mike said he wouldn't be able to, but he would be ready for part 2. And then, like I said, Part 2 is going to be May 29th for Megadeth. So that's what's going to happen here. But yeah, that's going to do it for me here. Thank y'all for watching. If you enjoyed this, click the like button or dislike, whichever floats your boat. I know this was short, but I wanted to get this over with and do this. But yep. Um, comment below what your thoughts are on these albums and why about this new Coheed album here. On is all. And if you're new to the channel, click that subscribe button. Getting pretty close to 300 subscribers. So, yeah, thank y'all for watching. This has been my Coheed and Cambria deep dive. I will see y'all later. And as always, keep things metal.